We welcome in Rink Wide chef Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. Like Applewood, like the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, everything's good.
What did you make of the weekend? What did you make of the trip?
Yeah, not much. A Saturday night, obviously. They're allowed the odd off night. They're not going to win them all, but I think it is. How do you bounce back? And boy, they took control of that hockey game in Montreal in the second period. First period looked to me like two teams that had played the night before. It was pretty scrambly, a little frantic, but then the Canucks settled in, and kind of like the Leafs did to the Canucks on Saturday, it was guys a little lower in the lineup. It wasn't so much about star power on Saturday or on Sunday for the Vancouver Canucks, but to see Connor Garland have his best game in a while and Dakota Joshua, and that line was easily the Canucks' best line on a forgettable night in Toronto, and they picked up where they left off. And Montreal had never shot on goal with Suter on the ice. That's pretty impressive stuff for a third line, and it wasn't just Suter, obviously, but Suter, Garland, and Dakota Joshua. And I think Joshua looks like he received the message of being the healthy scratch in San Jose a couple of games ago, because he has been good since. And for Garland, easily his most prominent performance. Interesting to hear the coach after the game say he's been one of the best forwards for a few games now. And I think that's a bit of a double-edged sword. I don't disagree. I think the effort is always there with Connor Garland. It's just that there hasn't been much of a bottom line. But it also speaks to the fact that some of those guys higher in the lineup have faded a little bit. And we can get to Elias Pettersson and Andrei Kuzmenko. But on a night at the end of the road trip, 3-4, where maybe you needed some fresh legs and somebody to step in and step up, it was nice to see that third line rise to the challenge.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Jeff, what do you think it says about this team that they can get victories on the road without their best players being their best players?
Yeah, and look, Thatcher Demko's been all world, and yet both wins on the road trip are credited to Casey DeSmith, and so good for him, and he just continues to deliver. He's 4-0-1 now, and so yeah, I mean, look, the Stars have been sensational, and it is kind of funny. I mean, it's been a long time since this market has dealt with champagne problems of people asking what's wrong with Elias Pettersson. He leads the NHL in scoring, but he was awfully quiet over the weekend. There's no doubt about that. And on the big stage, you wanted to see a loud, punchy performance from him. You wanted to see Quinn Hughes continue to just eviscerate competition, and I'm not sure that he did that, although he made a nice breakout pass to Spring Miller on the Garland goal that opened the scoring. So you can't say that Quinn Hughes didn't have his moments in the hockey game, but there's Phil Hronek picking up another assist. He's up to 10 straight now with points. Did you see that stat, by the way, guys, from the National Hockey League, that in the last 30 years, only 7 defensemen have pushed point streaks into double digits? Erik Karlsson, Cale Makar, Sergei Gonchar, who was behind the bench for the Canucks, he was one of them, and Philip Hronek, joining pretty elite company. So, you know, I do think that we're seeing that the depth on this hockey club is there. And we saw it on the second night of the season when they went into Edmonton, and it was a bunch of supporting cast guys that rose that night and scored goals. So this team is humming along. I mean, the 11 wins in 15 game, guys, and they've already cleared 2 Eastern road trips off the books. Like, that's pretty impressive stuff. 9 of their 15 games have been away from home, and here they are with a record of 11-3-1. So any way you cut it, I get regression. I get that the numbers aren't going to stay where they are, but damn, it's been fun through the first 15 games for sure.
The depth just got better too with Teddy Bluger, obviously, and for a first game, I actually thought he was kind of noticeable. I thought that what you expected of Teddy Bluger, you got, and for opening game, I thought he might look a little bit shaky, but he was good.
Yeah, he had the one bad giveaway to Brendan Gallagher late in the second period, but Casey DeSmith was there. But otherwise, yeah, look, I've never done it, but I can only imagine that jumping into a National Hockey League game when everybody else has had a training camp and a month of game action must be incredibly difficult. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to play in the NHL, but to try to play catch up in that regard. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, he got a little bit of penalty killing time. I thought Canucks discipline on the road trip was really good. They took 2 minor penalties in each of the 3 games. So that's one way to take the pressure off your penalty killers, is to stay out of the penalty box. And yeah, they ran into a little bit of trouble there in the third period where they had the overlapping penalties. But for the most part, you know, I think Bluger, if that's the baseline, and he'll get better from here. And, you know, all those things I said about Teddy Bluger, and he's coming off an ankle injury. Ilya Mikheyev, no training camp, misses the first couple of games of the season. And I really kind of feel like you can track the Canucks. He made his debut in Florida after the losses to Philadelphia and Tampa Bay. And man, has Mikheyev been good. And this is a guy that's coming off knee surgery and didn't have a training camp and a preseason, and just looks like he's in absolute midseason form and took advantage of Jake Allen without his goal stick. And it's unbelievable how often, goalies, I mean, you think of the blocker and the catcher, but the stick's a big part of their equipment too. And they just don't look settled in that situation. And Mikheyev picked his spot, beat Jake Allen. And that was a big goal because the Habs thought they had tied the game. Good coaches challenge. And then for the Canucks to follow that up with another one of their own and push the lead to 2-0, I thought that was a pivotal part of that hockey game.
He's getting 1.7% faster every game too. Like I'm seeing him incrementally. Every game I'm getting more and more evidence of him like just looking faster. Like it is coming. I think.
Is that a technical evaluation? Because I do believe NHL Edge will give you that right now.
That's
if
true.
you ask, Blake.
Give or take a few points of percentage. But did you see that? I do feel like he's getting his wheels underneath him.
Yeah, I still don't think that we're seeing him, flat out beat guys with speed. And I hope that will still come. But I think there's a confidence and just, some polish to his game that's getting there. So I would agree with you. And quite frankly, right now, he's the best of the three guys on that line. Now, it does sort of feel like Elias Pettersson is playing through something. He just doesn't, at least on Saturday and then again Sunday, sort of fading into the woodwork. The underlying numbers were not pretty for Elias Pettersson. And Andrei Kuzmenko is a fascinating study in that the points are there. The underlying profile is terrific. And yet it sort of feels like he's morphing into Phil DiGiuseppe before our eyes here. That there's not a lot in the way of the goal scoring, the big flash, and the smiles that we saw from Kuzmenko last year. And I think we all thought that there'd be some regression in that regard. But he's digging in, he's winning his board battles, he's doing a lot of those things that the coaching staff wants him to do. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that they totally believed that he could do. But his profile is different. And he scored so many goals at the net front last year, and the tap-ins, and those haven't been there for him because there's all this movement on the power play, and other guys are stepping in and scoring the power play goal. So, don't get me wrong. I think Kuzmenko's actually playing hard and playing well, and he picked up an assist on the Mikheyev goal, but he's got one goal in his last 10 games. It was the 6-0 goal in that 10-1 romp in San Jose. So not exactly coming through with massive goals for this hockey club, but the way that this team's scoring, you have to think it's a matter of time before Kuzmenko will get his as well.
I think I said this a couple of weeks ago on a Rink Wide, but I think the biggest problem for him is that they're shooting and scoring. Like the pucks are going in. Like the minute the regression starts for everybody else on the team might be the minute that Kuzmenko's scoring percentage starts to go up, because that's maybe when the goaltender's stopping those shots rather than not, and he's be able to tap in a rebound. So who knows? Maybe as one thing ebbs, maybe the other thing will flow. You never know.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is just look at the movement on the power play, and Hughes, you can't find him because he's all over the place, and Pettersson's moving all over the place. Kuzmenko's sort of been the fixture. He's been a net front guy. Him and Besser have kind of switched off between the bumper and the net front. But we see him down low behind the goal line and off the line. You're not going to score much from there, even the most skilled guys in the National Hockey League. And so, I do think one of the biggest differences is he had one of his best skills. And, look, he came in and nobody really knew what to expect from Kuzmenko. And I think one of his biggest skills last year was finding that open ice and knowing that the timing to, just pop into those soft spots behind defenders on the power play. And when you're playing with Hughes and Pettersson and Miller, they're so skilled, they're going to get the puck to you. And that's why he scored so many goals in the blue paint. And those just haven't been there for him. Again, the power play, it didn't score in Montreal, but it did score twice in Toronto. It's still running at 30%. So, this isn't me knocking the power play or saying that Kuzmenko needs to score those power play goals. I'm just pointing out the fact that this team is scoring in bunches. And he has one goal in his last 10 games, and it was a fairly insignificant one at that. It chased the Sharks goaltender. I guess that's about the most memorable thing about the goal that he scored at the Tank a couple of weeks ago.
What do you make of the fact that the Canucks are at 11 regulation wins? Nobody else is in double digits. A team like the Toronto Maple Leafs is at 4 regulation wins. I mean, as much as we can sort of point to regression possibilities and all that, they're finishing teams off in 60 minutes, guys.
Good summer, big summer. All they need is regulation.
I mean, they're not like these aren't lucky wins in a lot of ways, despite the fact that we know luck has played a part in it.
Yeah, I mean, thorough through the 60 minutes and thorough through most of the schedule so far, even if they have, as you mentioned, gotten some bounces. Jeff?
Well, I think part of that, guys, is that they've opened the scoring in 10 of their 15 games. I mean, it's a a much easier game to play from in front, and we've seen them do that an awful lot. I was looking at this. They've trailed 2-0 once all season. 15 games in, they've fallen behind 2-0, and that was the night they lost 2-0 in Philadelphia. So that was all the scoring in that hockey game. But otherwise, even if the other team has opened the scoring, the Canucks have done a nice job of clawing back and getting that next one, and then quite often getting the next one. And, think of the game at home against Edmonton. Ekholm opens the power play, or on the power play, and then it was all Canucks after that. So they've only given up the first one 5 times, and they have managed to avoid falling behind and then having to play. They've trailed in other games. Don't get me wrong, but just in terms of, bad starts and, getting in trouble early or giving up. And that's part of it too, is they just, they haven't given up many goals, but they haven't given up many bad goals, and those ones that are so deflating either. So the goaltenders have held up their end of the bargain as well. And any way you cut it, and I mentioned the road trip, guys, the fact that they've cleared off 2 Eastern road trips. I was looking at this, and I think this is like, for all the people that keep waiting for this regression and the bottom to fall out, if you look at the next 10 games, and it's a compressed schedule, so that's going to present some challenges. But the next 10 games for the Canucks, that'll get them to the 25 game mark. 2 against the Flames, 2 against the Kraken, 2 against the Sharks. They've got a game against the Ducks in there. They've got Wednesday against the Islanders. Of all of those opponents right now, Anaheim is the only one that is above the playoff bar on either side. So there is this opportunity. They're already 8 games above 500. If they were to go 7-3 over this next 10 game stretch, given the opponents I just mentioned, that would get them to 12 games over 500. And when you do the hockey math, they would essentially have to play 500 hockey the remainder of the season from the 25 game mark to get to 94 points and be right there knocking on the door of the playoffs.
Yeah. Colorado and Vegas being the daunting games on this next part of the schedule. We were talking just last week about the fine play of Nils Höglander and whether he was done being a healthy scratch. Just on the fringes of the lineup here, Jeff, what did you make of sitting Höglander? What did you make of Jolson for Friedman?
Yeah, on Höglander, he probably didn't deserve to come out of the lineup, but I think there were a couple of things at play there. One is that Teddy Blueger was getting into the lineup, so we knew somebody had to come out. I don't think Nils put his best foot forward on Saturday, and so if the decision was made on play over the weekend, then he at least opened the door to the possibility of being the guy that came out. I know on social, a lot of people were screaming for Anthony Beauvillier, and I think there are 2 things that kept Beauvillier in the lineup. One, he's the lone Francophone in this Canuck lineup, and their only game in Montreal. I think that would have been a statement if you had brought a veteran out of the lineup for that game. The other one is, if they have cooled on the idea of trading Connor Garland, and now the focus becomes trying to move a guy like Beauvillier on an expiring contract, the idea of scratching him right now when things are going well, I'm not sure that does an awful lot to boost his value. People around the league would take note. If he can't play for your team, why would you want him to play for our team? Like, back to this discussion about wanting sweeteners and all those types of things. So I think there's some of that. Now, again, you could have made a case that Beauvillier deserved to come out. Well, look who they're playing next. It's the Islanders. I can't imagine that they would sit Anthony Beauvillier on Wednesday. So Höglander may have to deal with this, because that Suter, Garland, Joshua line, like that one looks locked in right now. I don't see any changes coming there. And Sam Lafferty's gone a little bit quiet. Could he come out of the lineup? Perhaps. But I think this team now with Blueger back, they want to see what Blueger and Lafferty look like together. Lafferty, of course, a penalty killer, right shot guy as well. So there's enough things there that probably save his spot in the lineup. But they go back-to-back. They're at home to the Islanders on Wednesday and to Calgary on Thursday. And so, if Höglander's out for 3 in a row, then I think some hard questions have to be asked, because he's played well enough to keep his spot in the lineup and contribute to this hockey club. But yeah, I mean, didn't we had this conversation probably 10 days ago, like, had he done enough to sort of avoid being the guy that was going to be part of this discussion? But I guess the answer to that, we found out in Montreal, was nope. He's still an option to have to sit the odd game out.
Answer me the poll question. These Flames defensemen, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov, none of the above. Who would you like to see the Canucks at?
Yeah, for me, it's more the acquisition cost, and I don't like the idea of parting with a first rounder for Chris Tanev at this stage of his career as a rental. I got all day for Chris Tanev, and obviously it would be seamless to bring him back, and I think that there could be a fit. But for me, it's more about the acquisition cost. Keep in mind that Tyler Myers on an expiring contract, Ian Cole on an expiring contract. I don't know that you want to bring in another guy on an expiring contract and then have to try to rebuild this defense core. They've already got two foundational pieces now in Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronek. So if you were going to part with a significant piece or pieces, I guess I'd like to bring in a guy that had some term and could be part of this moving forward. So that's sort of where I come at the conversation here. I think Noah Hannafin has eyes on getting back across the border and playing for an American team. So I'm not sure that he necessarily would welcome a trade from one Canadian market to another. Zadorov is a Dan Milstein client, as we all were reminded over the weekend. And so you can't discount those links either. But yeah, I mean, look, the Flames, I don't think they're at a point where they're pushing any panic buttons. They're saving that or leaving that to the team a little bit north of them in Alberta. But if they fall any further off the pace, then I imagine that these conversations and these rumors are going to intensify. And so, I don't think that it's mid-November. Like, I don't think the Flames are having a clear off sale just yet, but they've made it abundantly clear that for the right price, those players can be had. I just, again, where the Canucks are with the salary cap, with what they've got in terms of pieces that they're willing to part with, I think you have to be careful if you're the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, you've got something good going right now. I don't think that they're in any position where they feel the need to, have to shore up things, but I certainly would expect if they stay relevant and they stay above the playoff bar that, closer to the trade deadline at the very least, you might look at bolstering your blue line.
Did Juleson make the case for more minutes with his performance?
I thought he was all right, and especially when Carson Soucy went down. They're down to 5 defensemen at the tail end of a road trip. Obviously, he hasn't played an awful lot. Got his stick up in the face, I think, that was
unlucky.
Monahan, a little unlucky there. But yeah, I mean, a full day off, as you can imagine, after 3 and 4 and travel. So it'll be a practice day on Tuesday where we'll find out, is Carson Soucy on the ice? If not, what's the situation there? Of course, missed a little time right off the hop with the injury that was suffered in the preseason finale. But, it's just in some ways, I mean, the Canucks, when they got Blueger back, almost back to complete and utter health, which almost never happens. And so I guess not a huge surprise that somebody goes down. The other piece of this, guys, is Guillaume Brisebois has just become the complete forgotten man, right? And he had a strong preseason and looked like he was going to make the roster at the very least. Whether he was going to be in the opening night lineup, who knows? But it's just been so quiet around Guillaume Brisebois, and you just hope for his sake that, he's making progress. But, that happened. His injury happened in the preseason game out in Abbotsford. And here we are bumping up to the middle of November now and out of sight, out of mind. But we'll try to get some updates after practice at the very least. But as for Juleson as a right side guy, I think, he had sat for a while. It was 3 and 4. So it was an opportunity to inject some fresh legs. Friedman was fine, but nobody was great in Toronto on Saturday night. So my hunch is that Mark Friedman's going to get back in there. He's been a part of this team's success since he arrived here in that trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I think it was more just about, that stretch of the schedule, an opportunity to throw Juleson a bit of a bone, get him some game action. But he is a depth defender by definition. And I think he'll probably find himself on the outside looking in when they get back to work on Wednesday against the Islanders.
Lastly, Jeff, you've acknowledged it a couple of times here. The next game up is the New York Islanders. And of course, that means the return of Bo Horvat. He has tried to get ahead of the reception with comments last week in New York about what he meant by that, commentary about it beats Vancouver, and he'll tell you that for free. What are you anticipating in terms of a reception for Bo?
Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction here, guys, that whatever you see on social spaces, that's one thing. Canucks Twitter obviously has a reputation. The people that shell out and go to the games and, season ticket holders, I think that's probably a kinder, more receptive audience.
For sure.
And I think just for those reasons, you may hear the odd cat call. Look, he was a loyal Vancouver Canuck through and through. He was groomed to be the captain. He played hard for this team. He was durable. Had an incredible playoff performance in the bubble, all of those types of things. But people also wanted more. They wanted him to play with more of an edge. There were times where, you know, he probably could have stuck up for other teammates and those types of things. And so, look, I'm not going to sit here and try to convince people that they ought to think differently about Bo Horvat. I just think while we may see some pushback on social, I think for the most part, in the moment, these are savvy hockey fans in Vancouver. I think they respect the way that he played the game, the way that he represented the organization on and off the ice. So I think it's going to be a pretty positive return to Vancouver for Bo Horvat.
I think he'll get cheered when he gets the video trip. He may get booed when he touches the puck thereafter, but I think you're right that it will be a kinder audience in the arena than it is on social. Jeff, marvelous stuff. Thanks for this. We will catch up later in the week. We'll see you Friday.
Thanks, guys.
This Sekeres Price clip brought to you by
Jason Mortgage.